Arsenal versus Aston Villa, 5:30 p.m. kickoff at the Emirates. Another massive game at the Emirates, the fourth in the space of about 11 days. And we've got another one coming up against Dinamo Zagreb in the week. But the focus now is on Aston Villa. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, like the video before we get into it. It does massively help me out. But without further ado, let's get into things. Starting with the team news, the injury news from both camps. For Arsenal, Mikel Arteta speaking today on our injured players. He said, we have a few decisions to make this afternoon with the medical staff to understand whether they are in the best condition for this game or the next one. So we'll decide that. The main one, I think, that's in contention is Riccardo Calafiori. On whether any of the long-term injury casualties are close, not so far. So that would be your Tomiyasu, your Ben White, your Saka, obviously Gabriel Jesus. So they're not close. Now, there are a couple of interesting things here. Calafiori, Tomiyasu, and Ben White were reportedly all in first-team training. Now, Ben White will need to be in training for a while before he gets integrated back into the squad, just because of how long he's been out for. Calafiori, I do think, is close. Tomiyasu, I mean, we literally have no idea. William Saliba was not seen in training. Now, before we all have an absolute meltdown, it is quite normal that players that are feeling fatigued aren't in training. Jurriën Timber didn't train between the United game and the Spurs game, for example. Saliba did feel something towards the end of the game. I tweeted about it at the time. Don't know if you saw it. When he went on that marauding run through the midfield, he played the ball off, and as he did, he kind of did this little hop. And he looked concerned. He looked towards the bench. He played the rest of the game. But I was watching him for a few minutes and he was kind of kicking his leg out a little bit. It might have just been a bit of cramp. It might have just been a strain or something. I don't know, but that's one to keep an eye on potentially. Obviously, that would be an absolute disaster if he couldn't play. Outside of that, it's really just about managing the fatigue of the squad. You know, you could see towards the end of the Spurs game, Timber looked out on his feet. Miles Lewis-Skelly, I thought, was beginning to look tired. Partey, Rice, Havertz, you know, there's a lot of minutes going into these legs at the moment. So fatigue could be a problem. For Villa, Unai Emery speaking today said Pau Torres is still out, not available for tomorrow. John McGinn is starting to train on the field, but not for tomorrow. Ross Barkley is still out, and Diego Carlos is not feeling good. I think that he's not going to be available for tomorrow. So that's the four that they'll be missing. Interestingly, new signing Donyell Marlon is available for selection. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if he plays. But I think Torres is a big loss for them. I'm always impressed when I watch Torres play. Barkley's decent, but wasn't a regular first-team player. And John McGinn is just a player that I don't like playing against. I find him irritating, so I'm not overly disappointed that he's not playing. Now, the form going into the game for Arsenal, off the back of a big win against Spurs where the atmosphere was back, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to kick on, and hopefully we do. For Villa, they've been in good form. I think they've won all of their last 3 games. They've looked better. They've recovered from that real wobble that they had earlier in the season. But one thing that is interesting is their away form, particularly their away form against the top half of the table. So they've actually lost their last 5 Premier League away games. They were against Spurs, Liverpool, Chelsea, Forest, and Newcastle United. I think their only away wins in the Premier League this season have come against like West Ham when they were poor, Leicester, and maybe Fulham. I think they beat Fulham away, which was a good result and a good performance. But outside of that, they have struggled in those away games. So hopefully that is the case again tomorrow. The concern is that for quite a long while now, it's felt like Aston Villa have had our number a little bit. You know, they beat us home and away last season. This season, we went there and we won 2-0. Realistically, it was probably the only game this season almost that we've come out of with a win and gone, we were kind of lucky to get a win there. And we'll talk about a few of the moments and why we struggled against them in this video. But I do think the way that they set up under Emery, he seems to have a bit of a fetish for us. We do struggle against. So it's going to be a very difficult game. They were away at Everton in the week. Didn't see that game. They won it. I don't know how fatiguing that would have been for them, but obviously for us, both the mental and physical kind of input into that Spurs game, we'll see how it affects us. And it's a big game for both teams in the league. You know, Villa are right back up there now fighting for Europe again. And that fight for Europe, you know, Forest, Newcastle, Chelsea, Man City, Villa, possibly even Bournemouth. are all potentially fighting for Champions League spots. I mean, we're up in that fight as well. The dream is that we can pull ourselves away from any sort of scrap for top four and really be in a title race. But every match matters, every point matters, and so they're going to be well up for it. Make no mistake, they are going to be well up for it, even though they've got a big Champions League game coming up in the week, as we do. Now, I was watching back the game, the last game that we played against them at Villa Park. Obviously, we had Bukayo Saka, who we will not have, but we also had Ben White, and a lot of the chances, or pretty much everything significant that we created in that game, came down that right-hand side. Our right-hand side was good in that game. In this case, Martinez made an unbelievable save to deny Saka. Our first goal came from this position. Saka pulled it across. It ended up falling to Trossard, who buried it not long after he came on. And then the second goal came from Thomas Partey at the edge of the box, but again, came down that right-hand side. And the key for me, actually, in all three of these is, yes, Bukayo Saka, but also Ben White, Benny Blanco. All three of these. In this case, White had made the overlapping run, which provided the space for Saka to cut inside. In this example, Ødegaard actually fed it into Ben White, who dummied it and let it go through for Saka. And in this example, again, Ben White was there making that overlapping run. And it's not something we've seen as much of from Timber, I don't think. I think Timber is probably knackered, to be honest, and is maybe being asked not to make as many overlapping runs as Ben White does. But make no mistake, you know, our right-hand side in that game was really, really good, and it was Saka and White that were doing it. We will have Timber, we will have Ødegaard. Whoever plays at right wing is not going to be Bukayo Saka. Nwaneri, I think, is close to being back, but he's not going to be back for this game. So, yeah, that is where we were good. But the other thing, and this is where we could still be effective, was that we were quite good at isolating them out in those areas. So, yeah, the majority of those chances came through Saka and isolating Saka 1v1 against a defender, or Ben White pulling another defender away. But we did actually manage to do it a few times on the left-hand side as well. Declan Rice, in this example, pushing up right alongside Leandro Trossard and isolating, I think it's Matty Cash out there. We were capable of doing that as well, and I think that's what we have to do in this game. If we can bypass that midfield too, then I think we can create plenty of chances. So it's all going to be about the midfield for me. And it was in the last game. You know, the way that we got caught out quite a bit in the last game was that Villa they almost went 4-2-4 when they were pressing. So they'd have a four-man press. And you could see here, both Timber in midfield and Thomas Partey in midfield got caught out. We actually got caught out on the ball here, and they should have scored. Gabriel got caught out on it by Bailey. Might have been a foul, to be honest, but it didn't get given. Morgan Rogers picked it up, laid it off to Wally Watkins in that space, and he missed the target. It was a poor miss. And again, that's kind of why I felt like we got away with it a bit in that game. But the point is, the midfield battle, especially against Morgan Rogers, is where I think we will either win or lose the game. And we saw it. I haven't got an example here because I couldn't find it in the highlights, but multiple times, Morgan Rogers would pick up the ball and drive through our midfield, and we struggled to handle it. You know, I remember him driving past Rice and Partey multiple times. Even in this picture, you can see Rice is well up the pitch when we got caught out. And I do worry about that because it's something that we saw even in the Spurs game, Bergvall, a couple of times. If these central midfielders that have got strong running power can pick the ball up and drive at us, it can be a real problem. So we've got to stop Morgan Rogers. It'll be interesting to see what lineup they go with. Bailey off the right, I would imagine. But they played Jacob Ramsey against Everton. So we'll see. I'd actually rather they played Leon Bailey, to be honest. But yeah, for me, Morgan Rogers is the one that we've got to stop. He's the one that's going to cause us problems. And we'll wait and see if we do. In terms of the lineup that I would go for, this was the lineup that we played against Spurs. And I think the back four stays the same if that is possible, if Saliba's fit, if Timber can play, I think he can. Lewis Skelly, I would keep in there even if Calafiori's back. Again, I mean, I keep saying there's no point rushing Calafiori back. We don't rush Calafiori back and he still gets injured. But I would stick with the same back four. I'd stick with the same midfield, to be honest with you as well. Ødegaard, Partey, Rice. You know, I thought they performed really well in that first half against Spurs. And then it's all about the front three. And again, it's not like we're gifted with many options. Sterling, for me, he was all right, but he didn't do enough for me to warrant starting this game. I think I would go Martinelli off the right, Havertz through the middle, and Trossard off the left-hand side. But again, we're really relying on that starting 11 to get the job done, because we're going to be looking to the bench with very little firepower to come off it. You know, Kieran Tierney at left wing again, those sorts of vibes. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a really tough game. In terms of a score prediction, I'm actually going to go 2-1 to Arsenal. You know, even in the game at the Emirates that we lost last year, we did have chances. We've got to bury them. Ultimately, if we're as wasteful again as we were against Spurs, probably won't win the game. But fingers crossed. Let me know in the comments the lineup that you would go for, your score prediction, how you're feeling about the game. And please do like and subscribe before clicking off. Other than that, I'll be at the game tomorrow. There will be a match reaction video after it, either it'll probably be late on tomorrow evening. And so until then, have a fantastic Friday, Saturday, weekend, and I will catch you on the next one. Goodbye.